Well, we're at the top of the hour. It's the last chance tour, FarmDoc PLC before the March 16th deadline. This is a FarmDoc webinar. I'm Gary Schnitkey. Jonathan Coppess and Nick Paulson are here as well. So we're going to do this. We're going to do what we're going to do here, though, in this time is show. We're going to give a little price yield update. We're going to give examples of how to make the decision process for Sangamon County, which is hopefully a relatively straightforward county. LaSalle, a little bit tougher, and then Iroquois as well. So give three examples of those decision-making processes. So that's what we're going to do. Just housekeeping here. The handouts are available that we're going to use on our GoToWebinar control panel. We're going to archive the webinar as well and make it available on FarmDoc. If you want to ask questions, you will ask questions on the panel there. Don't raise your hand or do anything else. Just type in your questions and we will answer those as they come up. So that's the idea. And that's the housekeeping here. So we'll get going here. Just a note, we are shooting for that March 15th deadline, which will actually be on a March 16th this year. So March 16th will be a Monday. March 15th is a Sunday. So you have an extra day.
And just a reminder, this is part of the housekeeping discussion, I guess, for FSA and the people at the county office. Showing up on Monday, March 16th, having expectations of getting this completed is probably not the best, soundest plan. So to the extent that you can get in early or call in and get on a schedule and a calendar invite would probably be the smartest move.
I think from FSA perspectives, that getting in early, a ship has sailed. They would not view coming in even now as early.
That's a good point.
We're down to less than 3 weeks, barely two weeks worth of business days to make this decision. So.
And one other point, you can make your decisions and change them before March 15th. Changing them is easier, I guess, than the entire process. So get in there,
That being said, I would not also call at 3 p.m. on the 16th with a bunch of changes. So,
all right. So there you are. So get her done. March 15th, our deadline. We're going to spend most of our time today on the ARC PLC decision that's due on March 15th. Just update here of where we are at as far as information on yields and prices for the 2019 year. Again, you're going to be making decisions for the 2019 and 2020 sign up. We're halfway through the 2019 year, so we have a pretty good indication of where prices may be and yields in particular. In February, WASDE released their estimates of prices. $3.85 was the corn price. Note that the PLC reference price is $3.70. It's highly doubtful that PLC will make a payment this year, but we could be looking at bigger payments next year because at the Agricultural Outlook conference last week, $3.60 was their estimate of the 2020 price, which would be 10 cents below the effective reference price. So there would be payments on corn.
And that's a pretty significant lowering of where it was prior, right? We were above 370 before. Yeah. So they're at least signaling a lower price environment.
Lower price environment. Soybeans came in $8.75 in February. That was down 25 cents from the January number. $8.75 will not trigger our PLC payments, but it will make our county be much easier to trigger payments. Again, and we'll come to this detail later on. Our county has a $9.63 benchmark price, so $8.75 price is well below that $9.63, so you really don't need much of a yield decline from the benchmark price to trigger a payment. So $8.75 for this year. Not likely PLC payment, but could have significant ARC payments for 2019. Wheat, $4.55 was their estimate for 2019. That's well below the $5.50 reference price. There will be payments for PLC and likely ARC in many counties We would suggest taking PLC for wheat because there's almost 100% chance of a wheat payment for 2019.
Yeah, wheat's the easy decision. Go ahead.
All right. PLC, just so we remember, it makes a payment when we're below the effective reference price. $3.70 for corn, $8.40 for soybeans, $5.50 are the reference prices for this year. There's a chance of them going below that, but that's not likely. Again, the market year average price is the national cash price. It goes from September to August for corn and soybeans, June to May for wheat. And if you take PLC, you're eligible for supplemental coverage option. All right, that's PLC information. Now turning to ARC. Last week, NASS released yields for corn and soybeans on February 20th. The map to the right shows NASS yield estimate for corn. This is not the same one FSA will use. We, however, did use this information to update our yield estimates for those counties in which there was a corn and NASS estimate. We adjusted those NASS yields to represent FSA yields. Nick wrote a paper this last Tuesday showing what those NASS yields adjustments were from across the country. They can be large and they can be variable, right?
Yeah, so I mean, a couple of things to unpack here. Again, the NASS information does provide us with more information than we had before last week about projecting 2019 ARC County payments, but we just want to continue to emphasize that even the yields we now do have from NASS are still just estimates of what those final yields will be. They'll likely differ. Looking at NASS yields versus the methodology that FSA uses to compute the yields that they will use for ARC County, comparing those over the 5 years where we have that comparison shows that they can vary quite a bit. Kind of here in the heart of the Midwest, probably pretty likely they'll be within 5 bushels of one another, maybe even within 2 bushels of one another. But, even a 5 bushel difference with corn at 385 is, $15 in ARC County payments that we could still see swing from our current estimates. So still estimating ARC County payments. Again, we have a better sense than just plugging in a trend yield given the NASS yield data, but still not finalized by any means in terms of what will be used to calculate the payments.
Yeah, and just these are FSA will use based on planted acres, so they're going to make an adjustment for failed acres. Whether or not there are more failed acres this year is a good question, but NASS or FSA will be using RMA data, and it will be based on planted or planted plus failed acres. All right, ARC County will make a payment when the county revenue is below 86% of the benchmark revenue, and benchmark revenue is a 5-year Olympic average of yields and prices. You're not eligible for SCO, and both ARC County and PLC will make payments on base acres and crops, and the base acres do not change this year. So we estimated based on those yields, corn payments in Illinois. Here are the counties and types in which corn payments are projected to be made. Grundy has the biggest payment, $34. Iroquois, $13 for all our non-irrigated Lake, $5, and Union, $9. You can see that most of those counties have pretty low payments. Probably the hardest decision amongst that list would be Grundy because it has a $34 payment. But let's say you're in Iroquois County. You have a $13 projected payment this year. Do you take that? Or do you take PLC, which won't make a payment, but could make a larger payment next year? And again, there's still uncertainty about those payments, particularly in areas where there's large failed acres and irrigation. The irrigation series is the irrigated yields from those yields are much bigger than non-irrigated or all data series. Here's soybean estimates from NASS. NASS released those corn yields on February 20th, Again, FSA will use RMA data, so these are still being used. We adjusted those yields based on the 2013 to 2017, and overall, soybeans come closer than corn overall. Would you say that, Nick?
Yeah, in bushel terms, the difference between the NAS, the adjusted NAS series that we are currently using, and the FSA yields, at least in that 5-year period where we have both datas, the differences are smaller for soybeans. But again, even a 2 bushel difference on soybeans is going to be about an $18 difference in payment, given that we got soybean prices around $9. So, even small yield differences can make a difference in those payment projections.
Here are the projected payments for soybeans, Ark County. You can see on all are non-irrigated on the left. Our largest payment is projected for Champaign County, 56 bushels per acre, or excuse me, $56 per base acre. That's based on an $8.75 market year average price. Again, if that market year average price moves down, those payments would get bigger, and vice versa. If we see those that market year average price move up, those payments would get smaller. Those are, again, based on FSA adjusted yields, but you can see there that there are some large payments. Iroquois, or East Central Illinois, Iroquois County, 47, Ford County, 37, Champaign, 56. You get some bigger payments in Northern Illinois. Kane County, $42 per acre over in the eastern part of the state as well. Henry County, 39. Southern Illinois, Jefferson County, $37 payment. So you can see that there are areas where we have large payments, and those areas you would sort of expect those payments. I mean, it's hard to see those payments going away. Here are those areas where there are over $20 per acre payments. Again, I would, if you're looking at between Ark County and PLC for those areas, I would definitely leave Ark County. Again, you may not get a PLC payment next year if you take Ark County, but let's just do a little math here. Let's say you're really pessimistic and you believe there's going to be an $8 market year average price for next year, which would be really bad. Really bad. That'd be a 40-cent payment. A 40-cent payment times a 50 bushel PLC yield would get you a payment of $20 per acre times the 0.85 would be $16. And you can see a lot of those payments are much bigger than $16. And that's a very, very bad market year average price.
But in that case, you'd probably also
get a payment on our county.
Would you get close to maxing out the Ark County payment on that?
Yes, you would. If you got an $8 payment, you would also be getting the Ark County payment, unless you got a really
unless the yields were just outstanding. Yeah. Right. So you're really on soybeans. Ark County looks like the best bet, even if you're pessimistic on prices, simply because of the built-in benchmark price and yield scenario that really kind of help that up compared to how much further it's got to fall to hit that target price or reference price.
Yep. All right. So soybeans, again, very sensitive to yields. 1 bushel change in yield can change payments by $740 per base acre. So that 1 bushel change, you can think about moving up or down a 5 bushel decline would almost cause you to max out on payments. And again, lower 2019 prices will increase payments and vice versa. One question, how do I anticipate payments for soybeans in Christian County, given that we don't have a yield? Christian County would be, would this be Christian? Yeah, this is Christian County. Good luck. Because I was going to say you could get, so it would look to me like Christian County, the counties around it are either getting 0 or pretty low. So it's kind of hard to say.
Yeah, but even again, right? But you're making a decision between Ark County and PLC in that regard. Yeah. It's highly unlikely that PLC triggers any payment. And so you sort of default to Ark County in your decision making simply because the potential's there, depending on what those final yields end up being, where the prices are likely to be. Ark County gives you the best shot, even if it's not a very good chance, right? That's the way I sort of think through it. You're going to default to Ark County unless unless you're so pessimistic around prices or that you think yields are going to be so exceptional. But even then on soybeans, it's the best bet.
And Vermilion County, I would be betting on a payment because they're right around here.
Yeah.
McHenry, same sort of situation. Again, we don't have any yield information. If you have expected yields, though, Ark County would not pay unless prices get below $7.95. And by that, I'm presuming that you're saying that if we have the same yield as our benchmark yield, if you take you would have to, our benchmark price this year is $9.65, so $9.65 times 0.85 or 0.86 would give you a pretty close estimate of that. All right, so let's just be aware of the deadlines. Advice: Ark County for FSAs with all prevent plant acres of low yields. We're going to talk about Ark IC next with our examples. Corn lean to PLC, except in counties where Ark County has large projected payment. That'd be Grundy County and Illinois. Good luck with that decision. Soybeans lean to PLC, particularly in counties with high 2019.
Soybeans lean to Ark County.
I'm sorry, lean to Ark County, particularly in counties with high 29 projected Ark County payments, and wheat lean towards PLC heavily. The only time
so far you fall.
the only case I could see where you wouldn't take PLC is if you had a PLC yield of like 10 bushels per acre, which is probably possible. All right. So here's your choice again, and you're going to do Ark IC or for all FSA, entire FSA farm, or you're going to choose between PLC or Ark County. Again, we sort of told you where we would suggest you lean: PLC corn if you're Ark County for soybeans, PLC for wheat. You could, again, enroll everything in Ark IC. And then when you enroll a farm in Ark IC, they group the Ark IC decision or the crops together. So corn and soybeans get lumped together, and it's your farm yields that are used to make that decision. All right, here's the process we're going to suggest you do. Collect all your information from your FSA farms. And what you're going to be looking for is your current PLC yields from FSA. And those would be from 2019 PLC calculations, 2013 to 2017 yields. And you're going to need these for two things. One is for PC yield updating, which will apply to yields after 2020. So you'll need to get those yields to see if the update or the 2013 to 2017 yields result in a higher yield than you currently have. Those are also needed for 2019 Ark IC calculations. So it's the same yields that's used for yield updating that will be used for Ark IC, PLC, and then we get 2019 yields in acres, and that's for 2019 Ark IC calculations. Second thing we would suggest is you run the Ark IC tools in 2019 Farm Bill What If tool. So you'll go through and see if your farm will make a payment. We have two tools in there, a single farm. That we would suggest running that once so that you can see how those calculations result. Then there's a multi-farm tool where you can evaluate combinations of farms in Ark IC. It's important to do that because when you combine farms, combining farms can result in different payments than each farm singly having a payment. This is a Microsoft Excel tool. It will not work on an iPad. So if you download it to the iPad, it will not work. There are macros going on it. You'll have to run it on a laptop, and it will run on Macs. All right, then once you do that and you decide that this farm isn't going to be rolled in Ark IC, run the Ark PLC calculator to evaluate the probabilities of Ark County and PLC payments for 2019. You can do, so this is for you people that don't believe our advice beforehand. We're going to show you the probabilities. So there you go. All right. Here's where you go to get those. Those are available on our FarmDoc website. So you're on the left, you see our payment calculator, a link to the payment calculator. To the right is our fast spreadsheet. If you're a Mac user, you don't use the download fast Excel tool. You use the one right above it. Download the spreadsheet here. So use that one and it will work on a Mac. It will also, downloading there will also cause it to work on a Microsoft or Windows-based machine as well. When you go to our payment calculator, you will see this. This is a web-based tool. You will be wanting to run the ARC PLC calculator. You'll need to log in. So you hit the login button, log in, and once you're logged in, you will be able to run the tool. All right, and here's what those two tools look like more up and close in person, and we've updated the information in our ARC PLC calculator February 25th, 2020. That will be it, except there might be one update for those counties that don't have a yield. We'll try, but I'm not making any guarantees.
That's it.
That's it. All right.
It's the last one, maybe.
It's the last tour. All right, we're going to go through these on a specific case, and we're going to do three. So we're going to start in Sangamon County. All right, Sangamon County. Here's what we're looking at here. In 2019, we have a FSA farm with actual yields of 215 and 65. We're going to use those to look at our ARC IC calculation. Our PLC yields for calculating PLC payments is 190 for corn, 50 for soybeans. Here's NAS estimates of county yields for this county, 206.65. We are actually using a 212. And that's based on the adjustment from 2013 to 2017, excuse me. So our 206 yield, we've typically seen higher RMA yields. If you look at it, we're going to show almost no probability of payment for our county for 2019 and a very low probability of payment for soybeans. All right, so you're in Sangamon County. First thing you do, run your farms through ARC IC. Here's our ARC IC tool. Again, this is our ARC IC tool. It's this Microsoft Excel spreadsheet. You go there. Again, ARC IC is a farm by farm choice, so you can enroll. If you have 5 FSA farms, you can enroll 1 of them, 2 of them, and then the other 3 can be enrolled in PLC or ARC County, and then you can make those decisions by program crops. Combine all program crops based on farm yields, pay on 65% of base acres rather than 85%. So ARC and ARC County and PLC pay on 85% of base acres. Here's the big thing though, it will pay the maximum payment on 10% of the benchmark if all acres on FSA farm are prevent plant. And ARC IC for one farm in 2018 Farm Bill tool, we're going to show that right now. So what you would do is, if you're in this tool, you're going to see several different screens. You're going to enter a state, county, crop. The county is important because of substitute yields that are used by ARC IC. You'll see those in the next slide. We have 2 crops, corn and soybeans. This farm, so when you go through that, you're going to have to calculate benchmark revenue. So this is the benchmark revenue for corn. There will be one for soybeans. Our corn farm, we set this up so that 2013, 15, 17 are the years we planted corn. This entire farm is planted to corn. We get a question, if the farm was planted in 2013, you have no yield, you didn't farm it this year, they'll use 80% of the T yield for that yield. So if you don't have a yield, it's 80% of the T yield, which in this case for ARC County is 148.8. Obviously, there's a pretty big incentive to get the yields.
Yeah, that's again, so there's a distinction here between whether the farm was planted, period, and whether the farm was planted to that crop. that I think is kind of important too. So if you look at the yields that are used here, the 3 years where corn was planted, it's the actual yields that are entered. And then in the other years, it was planted to soybeans, or that's kind of the assumption that we're using in this example. So then you get to use the county yield in the yields that they'll use for your benchmark calculation. But if one of those years corn was planted and you just don't have the history because you didn't farm it, or for whatever reason you can't prove the yield, then they use the T yield rather than the county.
Yep. And so in this case, 2014, we did not plant the crop. They're still going to use 5 years in the benchmark. This is the yield they'll use for Sangamon County, 253.2, which is the FSA yield for that year, trend adjusted. Use these prices, the higher of the market year average price or the effective reference price for corn. It's 370 for all years after 2014 and including 2014, 446. Calculate revenue, then average those with the Olympic average. In our example, it's 912.89. That's Olympic average. Throw out the high, throw out the low. That's corn. You'll do the same thing for soybeans, 78 bushels in 2014, 2016, 72 bushels. So in the other years, they'll be using the county yield 61, 65, 69. And then prices are all, in this case, the market year average prices here, coming up with the benchmark revenue, 707.14. So in the Sangamon County case, we're going to say you got 50 acres of corn, 50 acres planted of soybeans, yield 215.65. We are using 385 for our market year average price, 875 for soybeans. Those will generate a farm revenue of 698.25, which is half of the corn revenue, half of the soybean revenue, because you planted half your acres to corn, half your acres to soybeans. Our benchmark revenue is 50% corn, 50% soybeans, because we half and half. So that's benchmark revenue. Guarantee is 86% of that. Our payment is 0 in this case because our farm revenue is above our guarantee. So there's no payment here. So you're probably not going to do ARC-IC in this case, and you're going to make your choice between ARC County and PLC. One item to note here, this farm would pay, if we had a 205 bushel corn yield and 55 bushel soybean yield, that would result in a $40 payment. So there could be some cases where you have lower yields that you may want to think about ARC-IC. All right. So, excuse me, I went the wrong way. All right. Now, what we're going to do is we're going to look at this. We're still in Sangamon County, and we're going to go to our Gardner PLC tool. All right, so we're here. We're looking at our Gardner PLC, ARC County PLC tool. We're going to look at the probabilities here. This is corn, Sangamon County. You go there. We are using our forecast price series. Our PLC payment yield's 190. Here is what we're projecting for 19. We say still, this is PLC. There's a 13% chance of the PLC payment. So if we're projecting a 385 price and we have a 212 bushel yield, 13% of the time, historically, if we're projecting a 385 price in February, 13% chance of getting below 370. So that's why there's this little payment here. Corn, we're saying 0, but we still, actually, it's not. There's a little bit of rounding there. There's actually a 1 cent chance of payment. So this is an expected chance of payment. Virtually nothing. Next year, we are using a market year average price estimate of 371. If we use a market year average price of 371, there's a 52% chance of being below 370. So if you look at it, this is a simulation of 1,000 cases. 1,000 cases and 52% of those would be below 370. So pretty good chance of it. And you can see here, we're come up with an expected payment of $36. And that is a weighted average of zero payment in 48% of the cases. I'm sorry, pushed forward. And the other cases getting some sort of payment. You want to see specific cases, go to the Farm Bill spreadsheet and you can run scenario analysis. You can see here we show a 28% chance of payment for Ark County with an $11 payment. So this is why we lean towards PLC for corn. Okay, so that's corn.
That being said, that one outcome is that there's zero payment both years.
Yep.
Right. These are all expectations. Payments could be bigger or smaller than what you're seeing there, but yeah, based on the likelihoods, we'd lean towards PLC on corn.
Here's soybeans for 2019. No payment, essentially. 3% chance and 4% chance, no payment. Next year, roughly 1 in 3 chances of either one of those making a payment. Again, probably you could, in this county, you can make either one of those decisions and come out about the same.
Yeah, I think in this case, we might even say, well, if it's kind of a toss up between the two, we might lean towards PLC in that case, just because you could buy SCO if you could take PLC. I mean, you could make arguments either direction, right? There's no clear favorite here based on the odds of payments more than a year down the road. So
Sangamon County, if you're not getting an ARC IC payment, PLC corn, soybeans.
Yeah, I think you roll
toss up
on that. You roll dice towards our county just because you've got to have such a massive price drop to get anything out of PLC. In which case, you're going to have some Ark County potential in that stretch. So not to disagree, but I still
illustrating the difficulty of the decision.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think Ark County for soybeans just seems to be where you're more likely to see if you're going to see any payments going to be there.
All right, we're going to LaSalle County, and we have here, we're going to put 3 farms in here. You got 3 FSA farms, so one of them's totally prevent plant. The other one has the other 2 have 220 bushel yields, and the first farm is 100 acres. The second farm is 300 acres. The third farm is 300 acres. And we'll come to that. Our PLC yields are 180 and 60. Here's what the NAS price or NAS yield is estimated at 195. It comes up with no payment for corn, 55, 57, and a $19 payment for soybeans. All right, so the first thing that we would do is run your farm through our ArcIC multi-FSA farm tool. All right, here's the setup of this, $4, 3 farms, 2 crops. We have up to 10 farms, corn and soybeans, and we're using market year average prices of 4 and 9. So this is a bit higher than what FSA or what the projections are now. But 4 and 9. So you can change those prices to $3.75 and $9. All right. One other thing here. When you change this farm or this crop, be patient. Be patient because it takes a little time to set up the farm. So be patient when you change those farms and crops. All right. So now we've got our ArcIC setup. We're going to enter our prevent plant farm. So the ArcIC multiple tool, you'll see multiple ones of these screens. This is for each farm. We call this one prevent plant. This is in LaSalle County. It has 100 base acres. All right. In this farm, we enter the yields here: 226, 192, 247, 65, 65 to come up with the crop benchmark revenue. If you want to see the more detail on how these numbers result, you got to do it in the one farm tool. This farm has 100 acres of prevent plant. One note here, the minute there is any planted acres, these prevent plant acres do not matter. So if we put 1 acre per corn planted here, everything gets based on that 1 acre of corn. The 100 acres of prevent plant acres no longer matter. All right? So if we have an entire farm that's prevent plant, our benchmark revenue will be $860. Since we said it's all corn prevent plant acres, it's the corn benchmark revenue. Our guarantees 86% of it, and our farm revenue is 0 because we have no prevent plant acres. All right. Our ARC-IC payment for this farm is $56, which takes into consideration, this is the maximum. It takes 10% of this maximum times 0.65. Our ARC-IC payment for this farm would be, if it's enrolled singly, 100 times 56. We make this note here. ARC-IC is capped at the maximum payment. And that's going to become important if we enroll more farms in ARC-IC. All right, so that's one farm. We did this slide here shows this farm, which is what we just entered. We have 300-acre farms. If we put the same yields or same 147 and 227, roughly the same yields in here, 150 and 150 acres planted. So here's the important thing about this. 150 and 150, we get farm revenue of 733, which is 220 times our price, 65 times our price, and 50%. So that generates no ARC-IC payment. So this farm with 300 acres would have no payment if enrolled singly. Same thing here for this farm. Roughly, it's the same thing, duplicated one time. So we have 3 farms here. First one has an ARC-IC payment if it's enrolled singly. Second one and third one do not. So if we enrolled one farm here in ARC-IC, we would have a total of 100 base acres, and we would get a $56 per acre payment on 100 base acres. All right, couple notes here. When we're entering yields here, if we had a farm that had 50 acres of prevent plant acres, 50 acres of planted acres, the yield should be on planted acres, not averaged over the prevent plant and planted acres. All right, so you got this. Farm 1, Farm 2, Farm 3. We got one farm enrolled in here. Now what I'm going to do here, or what we're going to do here, is enroll the next farm in ARC-IC and then the third farm in ARC-IC. All right, and we did this on this next slide. So yes, no, 100 base acres, we get a $56 payment. We got 5,600 acres payment.
Dollars.
Excuse me. Total payment. Farm 2, we enroll it. We have 400 base acres. Benchmark revenue goes down. Our guarantee goes down because we're averaging items. Our revenue goes from 0 to 549. What is happening here is we have 0 revenue on 100 acres, 708 on 300 acres, and that's a weighted average of those farms. That generates a $48 payment. We have 400 base acres, so that's $1,920, $200. Here's the important point, though. If we got a farm that's maxing out, in certain cases, you can combine it with another farm and your payments don't go down much. All right?
Yeah, total payment could increase like we see here, even though your per acre payment is coming down from 56 to 48. You're effectively kind of opening up that limit that the max is hitting in your first farm and spreading that payment out across more acres when you add the second farm in.
But if you do too much of that, here we enroll 3 farms in that, you go from, because now we're averaging 600 acres of $708 and 100 acres of 0. You'll see we got our revenue going up. We got 0 payments, so you eliminated all payments. All right. Go ahead, Jonathan, we'll say what you were gonna say.
Oh, no, go ahead. I didn't mean to interrupt. It's
Yeah,
that is just a brain cell glitching as I try to think through
Yeah, so this ARC individual
weird scenario.
circumstance that we're in, which is very unique for 2019, is something that, warrants some consideration, I guess, and it can significantly impact payments. The key thing here is every farm you add, you're combining everything together like it's one farm.
Yep.
Which maybe goes to the question we have in here about whether you're the sort of risk, if you will, aspect of this. And so one risk is that there's a tipping point at which too many acres with revenue are going to wipe out the prevent plant max revenue. So there's a point at which that just completely shuts off potential payment. The other risk that I would sort of throw into this is you would have now enrolled multiple farms in ARC-IC for 2 years. And so you have to remember that while you might be able to game this out for 2019 to get $19,000 across 2 farms, in 2020, they're both still in ARC-IC. And if that you may not hit that sort of maximum payment in 2 straight years. I mean, that is you're pulling a real
we can't oversize
inside.
We can't oversize how unique 2019 is. I mean, one, because we know a lot about what happened in 2019 before you even have to enroll. That's not going to be the case moving forward.
Right.
And 2, just the unique circumstances we had in 2019 with all the prevent plant acres creating this opportunity. In general, in any normal, reasonable year, ARC-IC doesn't usually make a lot of sense because of the lower payment rate relative to the other 2 programs. So again, this is something that, again, it's a 2019 based decision, but you have to think about the fact that any farms you throw into this ARC-IC program are in it in 2020 as well.
Gary, since you've run this as many times as you have, are there any other hidden risks? So the 2 hidden risks are that you once you get too many acres with revenue, it just shuts off the ARC-IC completely. Yep. The second hidden risk is that you've enrolled those farms now 2 years into that program. Are there anything else? Is there anything else that you've seen pop up in these that wouldn't have been expected? Maybe
the other thing that I would do is so USDA is projecting a 385 price for corn.
875.
I would run these scenarios at $4.09. And the reason why is if price goes up, you could be running the risk of your price increases, eliminating your prevent plant farms.
Yeah, we don't expect the final price to even be that far away from current projections, but that'd probably be a safe price increase to kind of look at not that rising prices is a bad thing, but a worst case scenario from a ARC-IC payment perspective, right?
Yep. So if you got a farm that's entire prevent plant and you want to assure yourself of a payment,
then it's ARC-IC.
ARC-IC and enroll it only that farm. The minute you begin rolling your one more farm, so you run the risk of higher prices, which who knows?
So then another way to look at that is once you get out of that prevent plant farm, that what ends up happening is if your revenue pushes up just a little bit more on the 300 acre farm, right? You start to pull that out very quickly. So the sort of same hidden risk of adding another 300 acres could happen from the first 300 acres simply because prices go up just enough to pull that revenue above the guarantee. And that changes the entire calculus. So those are probably the major.
So this is Goldilocks. You don't want too many, you don't want too few, you just want the right number. But so if we do the calculations, so if you have a prevent plant farm, you can at the prices we're looking at now, you can add 3 acres to it and still sort of get a maximum payment. But you might want to be a little bit conservative about that. We have a question. I have crops in 3 different counties. I had considered prevent plant combined with low yields. Will my decision be based county by county? I would go yes. And again, if you have a farm, FSA farm, that's total prevent plant, I think that's a no-brainer. You enroll that one in ARC-IC. And then
That being said, though, any full prevent plant farms you combine together, even if they're in different counties,
get rolled.
as long as they're in the same state, will get rolled together.
Right.
For ARC-IC. But then, once you get to the point of looking at PLC versus ARC County, then it is definitely a county by county and crop by crop decision on those farms.
So here's a question. I have a FSA farm with tracts in multiple counties. How do you suggest using this with this calculator? And that's a good question. I do not have a good answer for you right now.
Yeah, I mean,
It is supposed to be where the farm's located. but
so
what
where
if
the
farm-
field, right, so you would be using the county that the field's located in.
But if you have multiple,
And if you have multiple fields across counties in an FSA, I'm guessing you probably got to run the calculator for each field by the county.
I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know. We don't know. We're sorry. We
Defer to
don't-
your, which county FSA office do you ask?
Yeah.
It's a good question.
It is a tough question. I mean, yeah, I think you'd run them both counties and just see, but
Yeah. All right. So here's our advice. Combining or enrolling multiple farms in FSA. Be careful. Adding a non-paying F farm with a maximum ARC-IC payment can increase payments, but adding too many non-paying farms can eliminate payments. One thing to note, so the only time you can add a farm and continue to get a higher payment is if you have a farm that's maxing out the ARC-IC payment, which happens with prevent plant acres.
right, I like the way that questioner asked there's a series of hidden risks in using this ARC-IC. Once you get beyond the one farm with complete prevent plant, you start to run into a series of potential hidden risks around, losing your Goldilocks scenario.
So we have this question, are the numbers on the 19 county yields in Kansas accurate? And we hope so.
They're what they were reported as by NAS, but again, depending on how you define accurate, they are not the final yields that will be used to calculate payments. There's still uncertainty surrounding those yield numbers. They are arguably better estimates than we had before, which we were just using trend yields. They are based on actual 2019 experience, but again, they will not be the final yields that FSA uses. We will not have that information between now and the deadline. So
The sort of answer that applies everywhere is this is the best information on 2019 yields that we have going into this decision. So they're not the actual yields that'll be used. They're not, this is the best information that we have for 2019. And that'll all be updated over time so that you're making this decision with just these yields as we know them now.
All right. So let's go to, what's that?
looks like we have a viewer who's helping us answer that question about the FSA farm that's got tracts in multiple counties.
They will break them.
Sounds like they will break them apart by county. We won't single out who's helping us answer that question, but that's the answer we're getting from some of our audience members. So,
And that was based on the Farm Bill made that change that the payment that ARC County is based on the county in which the field is located. So they're going to have to, if you've combined them into a single FSA farm, they're going to have to run the tract by county to get the farm payment.
We'll run through the ARC PLC calculation for LaSalle County. Corn, we still show a 20%, 13% chance for payment on corn for ARC and PLC. Again, roughly the same for soybeans, corn for 2020. We see a much larger ARC County payment estimate, PLC estimate for 2020 for corn.
And that's still a 371. So again, if WASI's already moving down to a 361 MYA price, then it makes this a pretty solid decision around PLC for this 2-year run because they're projecting already enough lower prices that you go from 52% to a lot higher.
So LaSalle County, we have a 57.5 bushel yield. $9. Oh, we're using a $9 price. We should probably be using $8.75, but 60% chance of a Ark County payment. So we built in the probability that those Ark County yields would vary here. 881, which is bigger than 20 cent, and that difference is bigger than what will be next year. So leaning towards Ark County for this county.
Again, the 875 only moves you into a larger payment for Ark County in that scenario. So
now we're going to move on to Iroquois County. And by the way, we had this comment question. We had a farm that did not have in Iroquois County any farm that was total prevent plant, and they enrolled all their farms in Ark IC. If they have no farm that's prevent plant, they probably have a 0 Ark IC payment. So, yeah, I would run those numbers before I did that.
yeah, again, we got to stress this point on Ark individual. It is a narrow range in which that program makes any sense in Illinois, right? It is not the default program by any stretch of the imagination.
2019 is, that range is wider based on what happened, but entering all years with kind of normal expectations, it's a pretty narrow set of circumstances where Ark IC makes any sense. It just happens to be that 2019 falls in that range for more farmers than usual.
So here is Illinois Iroquois County corn. We are projecting an Ark County payment for corn, $16.84. That's based on a 158.1 bushel yield, 385, 70% chance of that payment, $16.84. $1. See, we're always all across all these counties, we have a 13% chance of payment. We're going to assume in Iroquois County, you got it planted, you ran the numbers and your Ark IC is not going to make a payment. This is, in my opinion, a tough case. All right, you can take $16 now or bet a 50-50 chance next year of a payment, and that payment could be pretty big. So if you think about it, next year we could have a $3.30 corn price, which is possible, right? 40-cent payment, 40 cents on 160 would get you sort of in this $50 to $60 an acre range. You take the shorter $16 now or the chance for a larger payment next year. And that's a good question. Good luck with that decision. I don't know where to tell you to go there. Yeah. And soybeans, we're showing a really large payment for soybeans on Ark County, $44 for Iroquois County. Next to getting this payment would be what we would suggest take Ark County in Iroquois County. All right, so those are our scenarios. If you want more information on these decisions, go to our YouTube video. You will see a bunch of YouTubes here. This is our new adventure. Here on FarmDoc, we're doing a lot of these 5-minute FarmDoc dailies. You can see here we've got some. These all deal with the Farm Bill decision, and there's more of them listed there as we move down the list. And here is our list of our total resources. Go to our Farm Bill Toolbox. Go to our Gardner Ark PLC payment calculator, and these articles right here on FarmdocDaily will give you a description of all those questions. We still have a couple of questions here. One final question, and my guess is this is not the final question. It never is, but we'll live with you. Live with that. Assume your crop insurance is enterprise units. You have 3 farms, and since this enterprise units, you may be reporting to your agents the same yield over all 3 farms. So your yield history will be the same for all 3. Will our FSA accept this on ARC-IC as your past proven yields, or may you have to go back and prove yields for each of the 3 individual farms? What do you think? We don't. That's a good question. We don't.
That is that's a heck of a question. I
can tell you what I've heard.
Yeah,
I've heard that they will accept that.
I would imagine whatever
but-
you're reporting to crop insurance, they'll take.
But again, that's at some point we got to defer to the experts at your local county FSA office. But I have heard this question has come up, and I have heard that that would be acceptable. They would take that same yield for all 3 FSA farms.
Yeah, I mean, that is your yield history across those farms.
I mean,
So that
insurance records are an approved form to
Yeah.
document yield history. So, our guess would be that they would accept that.
if that in that scenario, that's a person I would encourage to get to the FSA office sooner rather than later and make certain of that. So in case we're not quite correct on that aspect, but it would presumably be that whatever your RMA yield is should be the proven yield for FSA for these programs.
So, and one other point of clarification here, for ARC-IC, all you have to do by March 15th, for as far as FSA is concerned, is turn in your election. The reporting of the 2013 through 2017 yields will be later, and I do not know the deadline for that, but it is after March 15th.
Yeah. The other thing that I think is interesting is in that Iroquois County example, is just the reminder of how much in this price scenario, how much the yields matter in our county. We kind of, in the last time going around with the decision, we had such high prices built into that benchmark. It was really price movement that drives that program. But between soybeans and the Iroquois County corn example, it really is a yield factor that's driving that program decision, at least until you get to a potentially really low price scenario in 2020.
All right. Does FSA base their yield on planted or harvested acres? And FSA adjusts their yields for failed acres. So it's really
it's an adjusted planted
acre.
Planted plus failed.
Yeah. If you're enrolling in ARC-IC on farms that have a history of being wet, this could also make your decision to continue planting corn in June this year pretty easy. Don't know about that, but here,
It's one of those situations we like to avoid.
Yeah.
Programs are not supposed to be designed to.
Here's our legal caveat. We have zero advice to be given in that scenario.
The one thing
Programs do not distort production decisions in any way.
I would also, though, say that if I had a high-risk land, I would tend to enroll in ARC-IC. What would the scenario look like if we finally had a drought year, which we have not experienced in quite some time?
How often do you want a drought? 2012 isn't that long ago, is it? Am I that old?
So drought.
It feels like a long time ago.
So drought. Let's just say I'll build you the scenario for drought on corn. Drought scenario on corn. We have drought. We have low yields. Price would go up, and price would go from $360 to $450. Let's say
$5.
$5. All right. PLC would not make a payment. ARC County or ARC-IC, probably not either, but could. If it depends on what your county yield is.
You have to that'd be a low county yield to pull down that price jump like that. And remember, in the next year, then it's going to be it's that Olympic, so you don't get to keep that. Like you don't get to capture a spike in Arc County. A 1-year spike doesn't capture in Arc County.
So when using the multi-farm calculator, do you leave 2019 actual yield blank or with a 0 when acres are prevent plant? So if you have a farm that's entirely prevent plant, there's no planted acres, any yield that you put in there doesn't matter. I would leave it blank, actually, but it doesn't matter. The minute you have planted acres, the yield should be on those planted acres. And again, just if you had 90 acres of prevent plant and 10 acres of planted, and the planted acres yielded 210, you would be putting 210 in here.
This Michigan, this is a really this is a good reminder again on the narrow band of ARC IC, right? You could have a 100% prevent plant to crop insurance, but still have planted another crop in there, which gets pulled into 100% corn prevent plant, for example, right? But whatever, if you planted any of those acres, that is the revenue used in ARC County or ARC individual.
Right.
Yeah.
And it gets, gets even more confusing. This point being brought up by one of our helpful listeners again is the fact that, insurance units, prevent plan is an insurance concept tied to insurance units, which differ from this FSA farm level decision that you're making for the commodity programs. And so you could have a 100% prevent plan on corn on an insurance unit, but then you've got, that's part of an FSA farm where you planted some other acres, and that totally changes your ARC IC calculations.
Yeah, we'll look into the issue, and I don't really know the answer. So let's say you have 100 acres of prevent plant, and then you planted a succeeding crop on that. I don't know. I don't know what they do there. So we'll look into that question.
Well, anything planted for harvest on those acres, anything considered planted by FSA is going to factor that into the revenue calculation for ARC individual. So it is not the same. I guess the bottom line again is to reiterate what Nick was saying. This is not the insurance reporting and the FSA reporting in this regard are not the same. And so,
the insurance units don't match up to FSA farms in a lot of cases.
So what are the odds of a drought? Here's what we would say. 1 in 10 years out of a drought, 1 in 25, like a 2012, 1998 or 2012 comes around there, 20 to 25 years. All right.
Right, but we're looking at a wet. At least everything seems to be talking about a wet spring. So that's
don't say.
Then dry off in the summer, maybe, I guess.
All right, so we are done here. We appreciate your time. Thank you for coming to our FarmdocDaily webinar today, and by all means, go in to FSA and make your decision. You've got to March 16th, and they will want to.
The time is now.
The time is now. Thank you.
Thanks for tuning in.
Thanks.